Hi everyone, my name is Caetano, and if you're an English learner, you're in the right channel and video because this is the channel where you get help for improving your English for free. You don't need to pay anything. What you have to do is to stick around. So, in today's podcast, I'll be summarizing the very famous fairy tale written by the Brothers Grimm. And guess what it is? If you said Snow White, then you're right. Today I'll be summarizing the fairy tale Snow White. I guess that you've heard many times about it in your native language. And today you'll be able to hear a little bit more about it, but now in English. Okay, let's do it. Once upon a time, in the, in the middle of winter, a queen sat at a window and sewed. As she sewed and gazed at the landscape filled of Snow White, she pricked her finger, and 3 drops of blood fell outside in the snow. And as you can see very, very well, the red against the white. So she saw it very well. And as the window that she was sat at was framed in black ebony, she she thought to herself, what wouldn't I give to have a child as black as ebony, as red as blood, and as white as snow? And not long after, her wish was granted. She had a child as red as blood, as white as snow, and as black as ebony. And they called her Snow White. Not long after the birth of Snow White, the queen died. And 1 year later, the king married another woman. But this woman was a very bad woman. She was, overbearing and, as I said, very bad. And she had a magic mirror that she used to ask it. She used to say, like, mirror, mirror, hanging there, who in all the lands most fair and beautiful? And the mirror always said that it was her. And the mirror always said the truth. So she trusted the mirror. And when Snow White was 7 years old, she went again to ask the mirror who was the most beautiful and fair woman in the land. But now the mirror replied differently. The mirror said it was Snow White. She became furious because of that. She couldn't stand a rival when it comes to her beauty and fairness. So she called a huntsman and gave him orders to take Snow White in the woods and slay her. And he would have to bring the liver and the lungs of Snow White as a proof that Snow White was dead. And the huntsman did as he was ordered. He took Snow White into the woods, and as he was about to draw his knife, Snow White was already crying and asking asking from the huntsman to spare her life, and she would never go back home. So the huntsman told her to run, and he thought, anyway, the wild beasts will eat her up. And he killed a young boar and took its lungs and livers for the king. And she she ate it. She mixed it with salt and ate it. Ate them, the liver and the lungs. And Snow White was left alone in the woods. So she she ran. She ran as far as her legs would carry her, and the trees in the woods seemed to assume forms like livings, and she ran past the rainbow trees, and she came to a house. That was the house of the seven little men, the dwarfs. But the dwarfs weren't there. They were in the heart of the mountain digging gold. So she entered the house, and as she was hungry, she ate some food and drank water too, and she slept in the seventh bed because the other beds weren't suiting her. So the dwarfs came back and found somebody in their house, and Snow White was already sleeping. So they didn't wake her up. They waited until the morning, and they asked why she was there, and she explained everything to them about about her stepmother, that she was about to kill her, and they allowed her to stay with them as long as she could prepare their food, wash their clothes, knit, and sew, also tidy up the house. So she agreed, and they also they told her to be careful not to let anyone into the house because her mother would soon find out that Snow White wasn't dead and would go after her. So one day the queen, the bad queen, the stepmother of Snow White, decided to ask, the ordinary question for the mirror. And the mirror replied that Snow White was the most fair and the most beautiful woman. And it said Snow White who lives with the seven little men. So the queen pondered day and night, trying to come up with an idea, with a plan that would help her get rid of Snow White. And she had an idea. She pretended that she was an old woman who was a peddler. Who A peddler is a person who sells things. It's like a street vendor. So she went up the seven hills and arrived at the dwarf's house, and she shouted. She shouted, "Words, words, words for sale!" And Snow White opened the door and let her in, and she sold a, a lace for Snow White, and she said, "Let me lace you so that you won't have you, you won't have to be bothered by lacing it. And the woman laced Snow White very tightly that she lost her breath, and she she she, she fell on the ground dead. She was dead. And soon the dwarves came from the mountain and found Snow White dead. So they unlaced her. They cut the lace into two, and gradually Snow White recovered the breath. And they told her again to be careful, to look out for herself, because the her stepmother would come again to look for her. So the queen was now relieved because she knew that Snow White was dead. So she went to the to the chamber again, to the room, and asked the the mirror who was the most beautiful and fair woman in all the land. And it replied that, my queen, you are fair and beautiful, it is true, but Snow White is fairer and more beautiful than you. She thought like she's not dead yet. So she came up with another plan. Now she made a poisonous comb and went the 7 hills again. And when she came to the dwarf's house, Snow White said that she she couldn't open the door. But now the queen dressed differently. Now she was another old woman. And she said, okay, but you are not forbidden to look out the window. As she looked out the window, she saw a comb, and it enchanted her, and she opened the door, and the woman combed her. As she combed her, she fell onto the ground, dead. So the woman ran away and went to her mansion. And when the dwarfs came back to their house, they found Snow White, you know, that Snow White was dead again. And they searched for something poisonous, and they saw the comb, so they pulled it out. And Snow White, she revived again. So the queen went to the chamber again and asked the mirror, and it replied the same answer, that Snow White was fairer and more beautiful than the queen. So she was furious again and thought to herself, I need to come up with another plan. So she thought, and she came up with a plan, an idea. She made a poisonous apple. The apple had two cheeks, one white and the other red. The red was the poisonous one. And she went the 7 hills again. And Snow White said she couldn't open the door because the dwarfs told him not to do so. And the old woman replied, are you afraid of your stepmother? Are you afraid of being poisoned? So she pulled out the apple and showed her. She was amazed and enchanted with the apple. And the old woman cut it in two parts and ate the white part. So, as Snow White, even if Snow White were you would do the same thing. So, you saw that the woman is eating the other part. So, you would take the other one. And when she took it, she ate it. And she died. And when the woman returned back home, she asked the mirror. The mirror replied that she was the most beautiful and the most, the fairest woman in the land. When the dwarfs came back home, they they found Snow White dead. They tried everything to bring her back to life, but they couldn't because they couldn't. They didn't know what was wrong. So they they thought of burying her, but she was so alive. Her cheeks was as white as blood. Her hair was as black as ebony, and her skin as white as snow. So they didn't bury her. Instead, they made a bier, a coffin made of glass so that everyone would see her. And they wrote on top of it that she was from the royal family. And birds from the sky came to to mourn Snow White. And long after, a prince was walking in the woods and he saw the coffin. He saw that Snow White was a very beautiful woman. And the prince tried to buy Snow White from the dwarves, but the dwarves didn't accept it. So he said he was in love with Snow White. So now the dwarves gave the coffin to her, to him, and he demanded his his men to carry the coffin to the palace. But as they carried it, they one of them stumbled and shake and shook the coffin. So uh, a piece of apple that was stuck in her throat, it it found a way out, and she was alive. And so the prince told her that he loved her and he would take care of her and proposed her. She accepted, and she in the day of the the day that they was married, in the day of the wedding, they the queen was one of the invited. And so before she went there, the queen asked the mirror the same ordinary question, and the mirror replied that the new queen, that was Snow White, were the most beautiful and the fairest woman in all the land. So the queen was now interested in knowing that the other queen. So when she entered into the feast in the park. Snow White was almost dead because she was frightened. She was afraid of her stepmother, but had like boots. They were iron boots that they prepared to her. And so this is all. That's it. So if you've liked the video, the story I summarized to you, you know what to do. I don't need to say anything. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and hit the notification bell. Bye.